Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to Culture Night.
Where each week we drink fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sarah, and we're back.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
It's been a minute. We're kind of back. We're not fully back. We're just here for a holiday bonus episode. We might have more than one holiday bonus episode, but to be determined.
We just felt like we really wanted to get back in the seat and get back to this whole podcasting thing.
Yeah, I actually went back and looked, and it has been exactly 2 months to the day since our last podcast episode came out on the day we're recording this.
Feels a lot longer than that.
But I feel like we have not had one single second to even consider doing a podcast, let alone actually sit down and watch a whole movie.
I mean, we didn't have enough time to do a podcast before either. We just had kind of gotten into a rhythm where we just couldn't stop, that we took a break, and then, the break felt good. But now I'm really, really glad to be back.
Yeah, me too. Especially because it's the holidays. There's all kinds of holiday movies, and I'm ready to get in the spirit.
Yeah. So I guess the podcast business, the main thing is that we've got a new setup going on here.
Yes, we are still working out of the kinks. This was set up yesterday, and
just trying it out, seeing what it feels like to have like a more permanent podcasting setup besides just kind of hanging out on the couch where we watch the movies. So we'll try this out for a little bit, see how we like it.
Yeah, we'll see. We might have to get some longer cords or move some things around a little bit.
Yeah,
but
for those of you guys watching on YouTube, I'm kind of blocking this nice centerpiece that you put together, but it's
$5
pretty
potted plant from Target.
Yeah. Well, sorry about that.
Yes, but we want something that looks a little more put together than our couch, and that we don't have to like rush to clean up around, that can kind of be pretty stationary throughout the week.
Yeah. The more barriers there are to like sitting down and doing a podcast, the harder it is to actually do it. The more likely you're going to be like, not tonight. But having this setup where we can just kind of sit down and press record should be pretty nice.
For sure.
Especially when we get back to season 4, which we are still planning to do. We're still planning to do sci-fi.
Yes.
It will be after the holidays.
It will be January 2024. Stay up to date with all of the
all the goings on.
Yeah, all the goings on with Culture Night Pod on Instagram at Culture Night Pod, or YouTube at Culture Night Pod. Or, if you want to email us, if you really need to know, email us at culturenightpod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that concludes
our
podcast business.
Yeah. Hopefully we're back for a minute. Hopefully we'll be back more regularly in 2024.
So tonight, what are we drinking?
Tonight we are drinking the 2018 Silver Reserve Merlot from Tobin James. We got a fresh shipment from Tobin James in our absence. And
nice fresh grapes.
Yeah, ready. Well, fresh-ish. It's kind of in the same years that we have been drinking wines, but that just means it's aged well.
Getting some floral notes on the nose.
I can tell you what, we haven't been drinking any nice wine in our 2-month absence. It smells way different than what we've been drinking.
Yeah.
I do get a lot of, it sounds cheesy, grapiness.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it's very
grape on the nose, not super alcohol, forward on the nose. Let's give it a taste. Thick and jammy.
It is thick and jammy, but it also almost has like a little bit of a smoky aftertaste. Like little fall sitting by the campfire.
Not sure I get that. I definitely get the thick and jammy part. The descriptions give us any sort of notes. You'll find this Merlot rich, deep, complex, and absolutely cellar worthy. So nothing really on the whole tasting side of it, but sure, I could say rich and complex, but it's good.
Yeah, it's very good on the first note. Like I said, we've not been drinking very nice wine, so I'm very excited to enjoy this bottle and see what our tasting notes are afterwards.
Yeah, we will catch you guys up after the pod, or after we watched the movie, on what we thought of the wine as it opened up. Speaking of the movie, what are we watching tonight?
Tonight, we are watching You've Got Mail from 1998.
You've Got Mail. Oh man, that really kind of dates it. I feel like that was such a really like common like phrase and like online like.
You hear it. You hear it. If you know, like hashtag IYK and whatever.
Yeah. I was always like jealous of the people that had AOL just because of that one bit.
I'm glad you didn't have to.
I actually went and added that sound effect to, I believe we had Eudora, I think was our email client that we had for our old Windows computer. Added that on there just so I could like check the mail and see it say You've Got Mail.
I really hate that you didn't give me more warning time that we were going to be doing a podcast tonight, because I would have totally added the like the internet sound and the You've Got Mail and all those like classic.
The AIM, like someone signing on and someone signing off sound
slamming
effects.
the doors. Oh. Those were the days. If you missed out, I'm so sorry.
The internet used to be a whole lot better.
Better is subjective, sure.
A whole lot different. But yeah, so the rating for You've Got Mail is PG. And let's go ahead and hop in our time machine back to 1998. So as we kind of already covered what the internet was somewhat like back then with the whole AOL Instant Messenger and all that You've Got Mail. Also going on around then, the top 3 movies released that year were Armageddon, Saving Private Ryan, and There's Something About Mary. I believe I've seen all of those. Haven't seen There's Something About Mary in a long time though.
I was just about to say, I don't think I've seen any of those. So 1998 season come in eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to do the Saving Private Ryan for like a war season. But Armageddon, we might be able to fit into the sci-fi season. We'll see how that goes if we've not plotted out a course yet.
We have not.
The top 3 songs released that year were Too Close by Next, The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica, and You're Still the One by Shania Twain. Gotta love some Shania.
It's really hard for me to not sing the songs I know every time I hear them, but especially because I've got a little cold this week, nobody needs to hear that.
I might change your vocal range. Maybe you can hit it really well.
That's a hard no. Yeah, but 1998, what a time. I think the fact that You've Got Mail came out in 1998, just like it's so fitting, like a time capsule of what I think of when I think of that year-ish.
Yeah. I would say 1997, 1998, like that year, like it was just a big recurring like sound effect you just heard all the time.
And I'm honestly having a hard time focusing on what you're saying because I just hear that like internet like
God,
is all this running in the back of my mind right now.
God, I love it.
Oh, it's so good.
I knew someone back in college that had that as their ringtone, which was just amazing to hear that go off back when people actually like kept their volume on all the time.
Those were the days.
So yeah, so
have you seen it before?
I have not seen it before.
I have not seen it before either, so I'm very excited. I honestly, I don't know anything about it. I mean, I hope it has to do with email. If it doesn't have to do with email,
would it be a lie? What if it's actually about mail, like in the mail?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
God.
What if all these years I've thought it was about email, but it's about like the U.S. Postal Service?
No, I feel like there was like some sort of like seen the preview on it where they were like emailing back and forth or something like that. I assume they've got some sort of like, it's some sort of like rom-com where people meet, but they are basically meet online.
Is this like the precursor to Tinder?
Ooh.
Can you have to imagine having to wait through AOL?
God, you'd actually go to your computer and sign on or dial up and then connect and then check the mail and see if you've got mail. That would be torturous.
Do I need to have a You've Got Mail count on this
Absolutely.
podcast? Is it Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks?
I think so.
I say that with about 10% confidence.
They were in Sleepless in Seattle together. Yeah.
I think so.
I feel like there's this, and I think I get it confused. Not that I've seen this one either, but Must Love Dogs. I think it's the whole like 3-word thing, like rom-com, like of that same era that I feel like this was like a common style of movie maybe.
It might be because I've not seen that one either. Add that to the lineup.
Yeah, to some cheesy rom-coms or something like that. But I think there's also a whole lot of like crossover from characters or actors we've seen in a lot of our Culture Night movies, especially season 1 of like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Which unfortunately those movies were pre-Culture Night. True, pre-pod.
Yes. They are what inspired this.
Yes,
I feel like we do need to eventually go back and rewatch those two for the pod and kind of make it all come full circle.
A catch-up season.
Yeah.
So I really don't know anything about this. I saw that this was on a list of Thanksgiving movies, which maybe there's a Thanksgiving scene. Maybe it all revolves around Thanksgiving. We'll see. I hope it actually has something to do with Thanksgiving. Otherwise, it'll be kind of weird that we watched this for a holiday episode.
Yeah, I'm going to be really disappointed because I went out of my way, in case you can't see, to put on my Thanksgiving shirt because I was informed this was a Thanksgiving movie. But is this a Thanksgiving movie in the sense that like half the movies that we've watched on Culture Night have been Christmas movies? I feel like we get like one Christmas scene and we're like, oh my God, this is a Christmas movie. How come we didn't know?
This was a Christmas movie.
Right? So I don't know. We'll see what. I'm sure people who have seen the movie before are like, those idiots. Of course it's all about Thanksgiving. Or there's nothing to do about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, or they're probably like, yeah, there's maybe one small reference to the word Thanksgiving in it, but it's enough for us to count it. So
yes, any excuse to get us back here behind the mic talking about movies and drinking wine, the most important part. All right. So I don't think I have anything else to add. I'm excited.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and dive in.
All right. You got mail.
Cheers.
Cheers. We're back. You've got mail.
Yeah. That was that movie.
Sorry. You've got mail.
There you go. Oh, you sound just like him. Man, uncanny.
I mean, it's a male voice, so I can only do it
you gave it about 8% effort there, but...
Hey, I gave it more effort than I did the first time.
Okay.
Anyways, I tried.
Yes, that was that movie. We'll get into that in just a second, but first and foremost, the important part, the wine.
Yes.
So our wine scale, as you are avid fans should remember, everyone who, the millions around the world watching, it is a 0 to 10 scale. However, it is heavily weighted because all of the wines we drink on this show are very good wines. So a low score does not necessarily mean that it is a bad wine. In fact, it could be a very good wine. It just is our very subjective scale. Like we said, heavily weighted. Mm-hmm. So that being said, how would you rate this 2018 Merlot from Tobin James?
I would rate the 2018 Silver Reserve Merlot from Tobin James a 4.0.
4.8 for me. So yeah.
I went back and forth, but it was fine.
Yeah.
It was not bad. Mm-hmm. We've had some wines that are just so good. Mm-hmm. And this was not like, stop me in my tracks. Oh my God, so unbelievably great. I'm going to remember this forever. It was good.
Clearly a step above of like the just general drinking wines we
tell you
have.
What, just took a sip of this black box, which is fine. Not next to something
the official,
that's nice.
Wine.
The after show wine is fine, but it is not good when you have it after having this Tobin James wine. It really puts it into perspective what 4 means. I don't know if you saw my face on the podcast when I took a sip, because it's just not, this black box is not good in comparison. But I don't know.
We also, full disclosure, just ate like a very strongly flavored ginger cookie.
No, that has nothing to do with it.
That can totally taint your taste profile. However,
no.
I agree. This wine, it didn't do much for me. It wasn't bad. It was just...
But I feel like that tracks with their Merlots. I feel like they're better known for their Zinfandels and some of their other like blends. And this one, I think in the past, I don't actually remember because we've had a lot of wines at this point from Tobin James, but it was fine. It was not bad. It was just not
honestly
something to write home
before the show, when you were like, should we drink this wine or this wine, I chose this Merlot because I figured it would be about on par with this movie of kind of like a yeah okay.
I was surprised you chose Merlot because I thought you were going to pick the other one because we notoriously like the other one better.
And I do like that one, which is why I didn't want to waste it on this movie.
Okay.
So
that being said, tell us what your movie score is.
I rate the movie a 4.2.
I am giving it a 6.8.
A 6.8?
Yep.
That's high praise.
Did I like the movie? Not particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I think 6.8 is the culturally significant score that it feels right.
You must be heavily weighting in the culturally significant part.
Yes. I feel like there were a lot. I'll get into it, but like I think there was a lot of it that was not like me watching it. Like, do I like this movie or not? It was more.
I mean, we can get into the scores now. Okay. With mine, it's like it didn't seem like super quotable or anything like that. Wasn't enjoyable to watch. I'm not really going to go back and rewatch it. I'm not going to like probably like catch it to the end if it's on. Really, the only part of it that got any decent score for me was the culturally significant part of really kind of like showing the AOL, the IMing, the times of having to like literally sign on and like talk to someone. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason it got like anything more than like a 2 for me.
I would pick it up if it was on TV. If we were flipping through channels that we don't ever do, but if we were, I would probably watch part of it again. I don't know how often I would sit down and watch the whole thing from start to finish. I also do not think that it is very quotable, but I remember when this movie came out. I remember everybody talking about it. I remember the hype of Meg Ryan, which I have notes on that I'll get to later. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was so much of this that was so like part of that pop culture at the time, and I've wanted to see it forever. I'm shocked it's taking me this long to see it, but I feel
the same way.
I have such this deep core memory of people talking about it at like holiday parties, or you're like, oh, have you seen You've Got Mail? And I don't know. It just felt like it had a big place at the time, but I also feel like so much of what goes on in the movie is so culturally significant. It was the beginning of meeting someone randomly online. Do I meet them? Do I not meet them? Is it cheating if I message something? I don't know. I feel like so much of that is what life and relationships and how you meet people today. And that this was so at the very beginning that I just feel like it was just a snippet of what was to come as far as our society, that I don't know. I feel like I had to give it
I mean, I was definitely getting like heavy dose of nostalgia throughout all of that. And like I said, that was kind of the main reason why I gave it the score. I think it would have been received better if it had been like 30 minutes shorter though. So like a 2-hour movie.
It was
and it could have been heavily condensed down to an hour and a half at most.
Yeah. I mean, we also had to watch it with commercials, giving it the true 1998 TV viewing experience.
Watching it on Tubi TV.
But
watch it soon because it's apparently leaving that platform in 9 days.
I know. Hurry. Hopefully we get this podcast out quick, but it's evacuating the dance floor.
It seemed like it should have been condensed a little bit. You kind of get the gist, pretty early on of like how it's going to go.
I will say I liked it so much better than Sleepless in Seattle, which again was not one that we have watched as the official part of the podcast, but it was the beginning of our movie wine adventure between the two of us. And I thought Sleepless in Seattle was terrible, but also would have gotten a little bit of a bump up because I think that was also a big like pop culture thing. But I think so much of this with the internet and the message room or the chat and chat rooms and screen names, and that to me I think has, and we don't use AOL, we don't use dial-up anymore, like that's all kind of a thing of a past. But meeting someone online, starting a relationship, like trying to figure out how you stand, I feel like so much of that is still a part of the culture today that I don't know.
Yeah, that makes me really want to jump into the movie What You Expected, but before that we have the movie description.
Okay, yes.
Ooh, so I will try my best. It's been a minute since I've done a movie description. So Tom Hanks's character is a like email pen pal with Meg Ryan's character. They both also happen to run competing like bookstore companies. Tom Hanks being a much bigger, like more or less human, like corporation almost, and Meg Ryan's being like a small family bookstore. And that ends up complicating their pen pal relationship as Tom Hanks figures out who she is. And then by the end of the movie, she finds out who he is. However, they are able to become friends because they still have all this in common from their online personas and are able to put that aside and become friends, lovers. I don't know. It's PG, so they hug at the end.
I think they kiss.
Yeah, maybe. I was too busy looking for the dog.
The dog. Yeah. They were not concerned about their dog. That was the most upsetting part to me. Anyways, that was an excellent description. Lots of details, a lot more than the one from the TV, which I have to now read from the picture I took off of my phone because of our new podcast setup. So I apologize. This is the description according to the TV is book superstore magnate. Magnate, yeah. What is that word?
It's like it has a lot of, I don't know. It's a word. You hear the word, you see a word, you're just like, that's what the word is, It's like it's a magnate.
See, reading the description is always harder. Anyways.
It's a wealthy and influential person, especially in business.
Yeah.
It's a magnate.
The book superstore big guy on campus.
It's a magnate. He attracts all the money to him.
Joe Fox, an independent bookshop owner, Kathleen Kelly, fall in love in the anonymity of the internet, both blissfully unaware that he's trying to put her out of business.
Kathleen Kelly also sounds like she should have been like a weird superhero, like where her special power was being a librarian.
Yeah. Kathleen Kelly is definitely like a librarian bookstore name. They writer script people nailed it.
I also just love how at one point he calls her Kathleen and she goes, Kathleen Kelly. Like whispers it to herself. I'm like, that's just like, when your name is that, you probably just always want to hear it. Like,
well, he went out of his way to not give his last name, so she was playing on the fact that she gave both names.
Sure.
Anyways, I do think that's a pretty decent description that doesn't go too much into detail.
No, not as many spoilers as mine. Was the movie what you expected? So I was expecting much more of a Sleepless in Seattle type situation where they didn't know each other in real life.
Yes. I mean, AOL chat rooms and, meeting someone that you didn't know. Yes, was what I expected. I have a lot to say about the actual relationship that they had. And I have a lot of things.
I was much more picturing like one of those, like they meet online, they're texting, they like, have this great relationship, whatever. They meet in person and just for some reason goes absolutely terrible. And that sours it. And then they eventually like reconcile towards the end or something and figure out like that they actually do more match their like compatible online.
Yeah. The whole like competing businesses, that aspect was not something I was expecting going into it. Already being enemies.
I did briefly see that this is actually like a remake of a remake that was not called You've Got Mail, but was like based on some older one. So I really want to like dig in and see like what the original technology is. Like, was it actually just letters, pen pals, like message in a bottle? Who knows?
Message in a bottle.
I just want to know.
I do. Done. I feel like we're gonna have some good deep dives for next week, based on a lot of
for next week, next step maybe.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, we have to do. Kind of we have to do a Christmas episode in sometime in the next couple weeks. That we have to deep dive these next time.
Next question was, how well did it age?
Like, I good and bad. I think it is a very time capsule of 1998. I mean, we lived in this time, and I felt so much nostalgia for so many of the things here.
I think if you didn't live in that age, it aged terribly.
Yes.
If you lived during that time period, it's very nostalgic because it's so hard to understand what that was like for like, I know everyone's like, oh, like my generation, no one can understand them. Like forever, everyone always thinks their generation is different from everyone else's. I feel like a generation growing up with that is just so different if you did not know that. There's a huge divide there.
Yeah. And now like she left her apartment without a purse and she didn't have a phone and she had no way to talk to people. And I mean, nowadays it's like, wow, that is so unsafe. Oh my gosh, what a terrible idea. Like that really stressed me out. That I think just so much of that time is so unbelievably different than right now that it definitely didn't age well if you didn't experience it.
But even things of like, you had to literally like log on. You had to go through that entire process just to like check your email.
And like you said, verifying password was step 7 of the logging on to AOL. So it was like 6 steps to just connect to the internet
before it could even like establish the connection to check a password.
And then it was like, oh yeah, let's check your password.
But also like when she's on her laptop in bed, emailing him or IMing him, she gets out of bed at one point. You see that she's got the Ethernet cable still plugged into her laptop. There was no Wi-Fi then. Like it sounds silly, but like this movie came out in '98, so like Windows 98 like wasn't really a thing yet, or wasn't like didn't have.
This came out in February of '98, so it was like pretty early on in the year.
Yeah, so like it was a very early on age of just like people having their own personal computers. It was kind of wild to me that they both had laptops there,
and even seeing what the chat room looked like when they were messaging each other back and forth is so different from what I remember the chat room looking like. Similar-ish, but like it had evolved so much by the time that we really got into messaging. I mean, because we were like 7, 8, 9 in this time, that it was before we really got our own chat accounts. AIM, not we didn't have AOL. We've already established this, but our own AOL Instant Messenger accounts. That this was super early on. And all of that.
It was kind of also interesting to me that they had laptops for this, because in my family, my dad had a work laptop like from his company, but I didn't have a laptop until college. Like no one in my family really had laptops. That it didn't seem necessary for her to have spent that extra money for having a laptop as a like struggling small bookstore owner.
And unless the laptop was cheaper, but then a full on desktop.
Much more expensive than.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, my dad also had work. It was all work laptops, but then he had the old laptops at home. So like I used the old work laptops to play on
desktops.
And then I eventually got a desktop, and then I had laptops in middle and high school.
Brag about it.
I was trying to be subtle about it.
So that honestly, this ties in with how well it ages. Could this movie be made today?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Technology,
which is like so
would
cool.
Have been different. So.
I hope there's like a remade version that we just haven't seen yet.
In that vein, though, like I really, I made a note about their emails and the way they talked to each other, especially a lot of it where it wasn't really personal or digging into it or really like topical, where she had to talk about how she wanted to just dive in like as if they were in the middle of a conversation, that it felt like their emails just felt like tweets passing in the wind. Mm-hmm. They were just like basically tweeting about their day to each other to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I think if it was made today, it would be much more like this person was like tweeting or like, I'm sorry, Xing, like no one says that, tweeting, into the void, and someone like starts replying to it, and they weren't necessarily meant for them, and like they, I guess, bond over that, or actually then sort of discourse from it.
I think it could go a lot of different directions. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. I know there's a hot debate of whether audiobooks are reading books. I listen to a lot of books, and there are so many different spins on the same types of stories like this that I think it could be told in a lot of different ways, whether it's the tweeting aspect or they meet on Tinder or, some made up version or dating app type thing.
I think if it was Twitter, if it was Tinder, it would have to be more like a catfishing situation to kind of have the same overall vibe of this. Otherwise you'd see them and
you see their pictures. Yeah. It'd definitely have to be more of like a social media where you can have more anonymity. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can make an Instagram account for anything.
Yeah.
We have a podcast Instagram account that we don't have to have our pictures tied to it. That I think, a dating app, you have a picture. Mm-hmm. And from my personal experience, if you don't have a picture, swipe left.
Yep. Very sketchy.
But I would love to see a more modern, right? I mean, it would have to have a totally different title because You Got Mail is exclusive to like a very short window of time in the late 90s, early 2000s. Out of it. Oh my gosh. You hear it. I mean, I did my best, apparently 8% attempt at sounding like You've Got Mail. I'm going to be bitter about that for a while. But you hear it, you hear the phrase, or you read, even if you read the phrase, you hear it in your head.
Yeah.
If you grew up in that time, like that's just so good.
Well, speaking of the You Got Mail, did they say the title of the movie in the movie?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, the sound effect, and then later on, Tom Hanks straight up said it. You've got mail. Mm-hmm. It made me so happy. It's like my favorite thing of any movie ever is when they say the title. He
literally lives for that. It's kind
especially when they don't have to. But this one, it felt more. You kind of had to say the movie at least at some point with the You Got Mail, considering it was the whole like AOL sound effect. Does the title fit the movie?
Yes,
for sure. I don't really think there's any other
coming out in the time that it did. Actually using AOL, I feel like so much more often these days, if people are using internet or apps, it's a made up version of something that's similar to Instagram or Facebook or whatever web browser they're using. It doesn't always seem to be like actually the app that everybody uses in real life. That to be using the actual AOL, having the sound effects, all of that.
That being said, though, I mean, you could have had other names like let's see, like LOL, Love Online, which would have been a really apt way for people to bastardize LOL, because people always wanted to say it was like laugh online, laugh out loud, like, and there was a big debate on that.
But I feel like even really before, like this was like right as people were starting to make the abbreviations.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that would make a good play on it though, like to do that, or like E-Love or something like that. Like anything was a big thing at the time.
Oh yeah.
But I think this was the best.
You've Got Mail for sure.
I was just thinking of other possibilities, not saying they were any better. I think that
you're usually pretty good with bonus titles. I still think You've Got Mail is.
Well, I said this is, you can't beat it, but here were some alternate possibilities.
I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm saying that I just feel like You Got Mail is too good, but
right,
nothing else would match up to that.
Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things? I don't know if there's really bigger things.
There was a lot of big named people in it.
Surprisingly, Dave Chappelle for some reason.
I was shocked when I saw that in the opening credits.
Just seemed so odd.
I don't think of it as being an actor,
especially in some cheesy like rom-com.
White people rom-com.
Yeah, about
a bookstore and online dating. It just doesn't seem like his niche.
And then it had obviously Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. They were big well before this,
and they'd already been in a movie 5 years before this.
And then it had, what's that guy's name? He's in like everything. He was in White Lotus
Zahn
recently.
Is his last name. I don't have the remote over here to turn it back on.
Steve Zahn.
It
had Steve Zahn in it, who's just in like everything.
Friends, White Lotus.
Then it also had the actress that played Callie O'Malley. I think she was probably the most of the characters, the one that went on to do bigger things, going into Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
She played some weird Hispanic grocery clerk and then went on to be a major role in Grey's Anatomy and probably made way more money in that than...
You don't think she made a lot of money for the 3 seconds she was on the screen?
I don't know, man. I don't know how much money they pay for movies versus TV, but I would assume that probably...
I think Grey's Anatomy probably...
I don't know if she gets any residuals from this movie being shown.
I don't think she gets residuals from Grey's Anatomy anymore, though.
True. And then what impact do you think the movie had on pop culture? A lot. I think it was very much a sign of the times of what online dating and internet culture and how people talked about being online, the uncertainty that people had about like your relationship with someone online versus in person.
And I love like how she was so embarrassed, like, oh, we met online. Like it was, you could tell that it was like, this is so new and people aren't really doing this, but like I've talked to this person, we've created this relationship, but I don't know how I feel about it. And I like, is it cheating? Because I don't even know this person. Like this is something that people don't do. That I loved how they portrayed that. I thought that was excellent.
And it's crazy because this was kind of showing something that people didn't really think of as like a valid way to have a relationship or something that people like really did. And nowadays, if you didn't know someone online or like talk to them online, like you can't even like imagine meeting someone and be like, oh, I've never like chatted with them online. Mm-hmm. Not that we like people email back and forth or anything like that, but there's so many different like messaging and chat apps that when you meet someone in real life, the first thing you would do would be to like go home and like look them up on like Facebook or any of their online social presence and start like interacting with them through that to like meet again or something.
And I do feel like there is something that takes a little bit of the pressure off when you can talk to somebody, even if you've met them in person first and then you're talking with them through texting or messaging apps or wherever you're talking to someone, to have that beat to like pause and think before you respond. Mm-hmm. It can spiral out of control if you dwell on it too much, but I do think it kind of gives you a second to process what people are saying. Mm-hmm. And some people would argue that it's less authentic, but I also feel like sometimes like when you're meeting your person, we spent so much of our early days talking because we didn't through messaging because we didn't live in the same place, to just like have that like beat to like not just like blurt something out or to process what you're saying or
to be able to like give them your full attention. Mm-hmm. If you are just in like a situation where you're in a setting with all of your friends and there's stuff going on, all that, you're just making like silly small talk. You're not really getting into like deep conversations. You're not continuing them over a couple of days. That to be able to say, here's what's actually going on in my life. I actually have the time to like explain this to you, or you have the time to listen to me. Here's things beyond just the, hey, how's the weather, or where did you go to school type things. You can actually like expand upon that. Is like such a, at least probably in the time of this movie, an underrated way of actually interacting with someone.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times, like people get up in their own heads of, oh, like I couldn't possibly say this to somebody's face. Mm-hmm. But when you have that time to be like, okay, like I don't have to sit down and tell this person all of this stuff about myself to their face. Like I can think about how I'm going to present it and kind of like talk through it in a way that I feel comfortable with. I think there is a lot of merit to being able to express yourself that way.
Definitely an extreme though of like overthinking things.
100%.
The point of like having to ghost someone, but
yeah. Or playing the game of like, it's been 6 minutes since he responded. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess I have to wait 6 minutes to respond back, or, it can snowball and get extreme.
But can we talk about like there's obviously like the huge dopamine rush and just like euphoria you get when you like see that you've got an unread message from that person. Like it can be kind of like nerve wracking sometimes, but like when you see like that person's screen name and a message from them and you're like, oh my God, yes. But then also tie that to when she signed on after she'd been stood up and she like logs on and sees that there are no messages from that person. Also that like crushing feeling of like, oh man, like, do they even like me? Is this stupid? Like,
so I'm gonna like true confessions you right now. We've been married for like how many years? Mm-hmm. Not 10, but like getting close to it. I still get excited when you send me text messages, like still to this day. And you work from home, like we're together all the time, but every time I get a message from you, I'm like, oh, he's thinking about me.
Even when things just like, hey, our kid pooped.
Yeah. Still to this day, I still get excited. And then when you go out of town and I don't have a message from you, there's a lot of disappointment.
I'm sorry.
So I just need you to know that like that still happens, even though we're not.
A lot of pressure. Every time you pick up your phone, I need to have at least one message waiting for you.
It's okay. I don't expect it all day long.
Text whenever I go on work trips.
Just know I just really love you. And I really like to hear from you. But for real, you were talking about it and I was like, oh my God, that's still how I feel all these years later.
But don't you wish I had like a screen name instead of just like my actual name there so you could like really feel that like nostalgia vibe?
I would love that. Because I have a note that's about screen names and stuff, but I would love for you to have a screen name. That'd be amazing.
All right. Well, let's get into our notes. But first we have to answer one last question of, do you feel cultured after watching it?
Yes.
Oh yeah. 100%. Resounding yes. Just, I love the nostalgia there. I also just love this was such a time capsule of that particular time period of like the late 90s, early 2000s of how you had to get online and interact, the really genesis of like actually meeting people online.
And we were so young when this came out, so we didn't live this in this time period specifically. It has evolved since then to when we were more adults and looking for love. But I remember the hype of the internet and the screen names and getting my own, and like we were around for all of this.
We're like the youngest
generation
that still like really understands and appreciates that aspect of like remembering the before times.
The before times, I love it.
So with that, let's move into the notes. Would you like to go first?
I would love to go first. So my first note is just, I feel like kind of an oops thing when,
like that.
Kind of an oops thing at the beginning. When she first goes to check her computer, she's getting ready to sit down at her desk, and obviously the camera's behind her to see her computer. And before she even touches the computer, the like logging into AOL screen pops up. So she hasn't even touched it yet. And I think it was just a like continuity of, oh, she's not there yet. She's supposed to be already sitting down and have supposedly clicked on this already. So I thought that was really interesting. And then
still gotta love the whole like screensaver. Like people don't do that anymore. It's just,
I didn't make a note about that.
Open up your laptop and it's just there.
But can we talk about screensavers for a second? I don't have a note about this, but like, I feel like it was ingrained into me that you had to have a screensaver, because something like that was like better, like good for the health of your computer monitor to have the pixels moving.
You could get burned in.
Yeah.
So it's like literally what I call it a screen saver. It saves your screen by not having the same pixels.
I'm sure there was like a technical term. It felt scary.
Things like Windows, we had like constant like taskbar at the bottom that could burn in. So that if you wanted to like watch something full screen or do anything, not that people were like watching streaming movies back then, but if you had something burned in there, they could just ruin the screen.
But I also remember the like rush of being like, all right, I'm going to pick a new screensaver. Which one? Is it going to be like the pipes?
I was going to say the pipes. Freaking love the pipes.
Building up around, or the like weird ball that would turn into the cones that would then turn back into the ball.
Or the one that just bounce around to the various corners.
Or there was that weird one that would like look like a web. I didn't like that one as much.
So when my brother was in elementary school around Halloween time, he was in the library and decided to change the screensaver on all of the computers to a Halloween themed. It was a jack-o'-lantern one. I don't know if you remember that one from the Windows ones. And it was jack-o'-lantern, just like flash a bunch of different like pictures of like jack-o'-lantern like type things, like full screen, like orange, black, white, and did not tell the librarians that he was doing this. They freaked out, the librarians, and thought that their like school was being hacked. And it took them like hours to figure out who the culprit was and figure out like what it actually.
How did they even figure out it was him?
I don't remember. I think they probably like asked around or something. But they were like freaking out until they realized that they'd seen, I guess, him like walking around to the computers, because my family was known as like the computer brainiacs and whatnot of the school. And it turns out that it was not in fact the school being hacked. It was just a simple change to a festive jack-o'-lantern themed.
So kind of on that same, so we kept bringing up more and more screensavers that I forgot about. We need to like deep dive old school screensavers, because I feel like there's so many I don't even remember. Were there clouds, or was that just a background?
I mean, there was the Bliss background for Windows XP. I don't know. I would love to go back through them. I remember when Windows XP came out, there were a lot of really cool backgrounds. One that looked kind of like a Doom video game. They would like walk through like halls and stuff. I
feel like there was a screensaver that was almost like a video game looking one. There's so many. I could go on and on. But
love the pipes though.
There was
the stars that flew through the Windows like whatever thing that would
I feel like there was like a banner that you could change the text on it.
Probably.
I think that banner you could like change it and make it say whatever you want.
And it would like bounce around too.
Oh my gosh. We went in deep right there, but I just nostalgically love that. Back to my notes. So I was kind of talking about how like Meg Ryan was going up to her computer and the camera was behind her. It kind of irritated me that when Tom Hanks was going up to his computer to like check his mail and the camera was behind him, his desk, like his back was to the door of his room. And that just unsettled me throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Because every person who's ever had an office, their computer is not facing the door. Like your computer is always facing away from the door.
Yeah, especially if you're doing something like meeting someone online that you're like embarrassed to tell people about or do anything. Like you want some sort of privacy when someone like knocks or opens the door to like have that second to quickly minimize.
Well, I wasn't even going on to that, but like he's also like a big business guy. He was like one of the founders of Fox and Sons Business Co. Like, wouldn't you want some kind of privacy just for all the stuff that you're working on about this like major corporation that's taking over and ruining all the small businesses? That just irritated me. I'm like, he would absolutely
expect that. It's more the espionage of like online dating.
Absolutely. But anyways, that just irritated me that his computer screen was facing the door. No one would ever do that. Stupid. Let's talk about the fact that her screen name was Shop Girl.
Yeah,
no numbers,
one, right?
Nothing.
Looked into that.
I mean, was she like an OG AOL? She was
the first girl that loved to shop, I guess.
Yeah. And I definitely thought it was like she loved shopping exclusively, but then I realized that she like worked at it. She was a girl that worked at it. They did say that she was watching
the Home Shopping Network when he showed up at her apartment.
Yeah. I just was, before I knew anything else about her, I just assumed she was like a Rachel Green from Friends that just loved Bloomingdale's, and she does mention Bloomingdale's, but like way more to the extreme of the like fashion industry than her little bookstore.
Yeah, I also feel like screen names were so much of a thing of you set them once and most people just like never changed them, or I feel like a lot of people either never changed them or chronically changed them. It was just
yes. Yeah,
my screen name this week is this.
Yes, I had 2 over the course of my screen name time. My best friend had about 7, maybe more.
Yeah, I mainly had 2, but I overall had like 50.
50?
I mean, I changed them a lot because I figured I wanted like different ones, but for the most part, my online time was like probably like a 75-25 between 2.
Did we have to have an email and a password to make screen names? I literally don't remember anything about the creation. No. I think it was just like as long as you had a password that matched the screen name, you could log into it.
Yeah, you could just do it with the username and password.
Crazy.
I think it was later that you could tie it to a email if you wanted to like recover your password. But I think before that, it was just like the secret questions and stuff people had.
My brain is just so like, I'm having a hard time focusing because it's so like visually full of like the vision of my screen and the colors of like making your away message and the chat box on the side and the sounds of the doors opening and closing. And like, I'm having a really hard time. It's like overloaded right now.
That thrill of making a new screen name and being like, this is new me. This is
new year, new me.
100% new week, new me. You could just be like, I'm starting over. I need a new friends list. I'm going to start messaging people and say, hey guys, this is me now. Just that like clean slate. Just love that. And
the like actively choosing your away message and like coming up with one that was like, you felt really crafty.
Oh yeah. So much thought went into all of mine.
I would probably just like turn into dust if I ever read them, but I would love a like history log of my away messages.
So I had I don't know if it was AIM extension or like custom version of AIM called Dead AIM where it could save all of my old messages. And I feel like it should be somewhere on my like old hard drive at my parents' house somewhere. I would love to go back and look through and see like what I said. I feel like it'd be the best cringiest messages ever.
I will say I have some printed out conversations. Why, I don't know, but I have found them recently and it really hurt me. It like really hurt me to read from like 8th grade. Like the worst time to have a screen name and to have printed out copies of it. It was bad, but I did find some recently. It was
really. So did you print them out in color?
I don't think so.
See, I feel like
I wouldn't dare use color ink.
I'm just thinking like the whole like I forget who one was red and one was blue, like whether you were sending it or like receiving it. I remember that being also really fun to game because you could do Shift Enter and then you could pose as someone else by writing their username with bold in that color, and got into a lot of hijinks then.
So now you understand why his family was the computer family.
I mean, internet used to be a whole lot better back then.
It was different. Okay, moving on. This is getting long already. We're just like so deep in nostalgia here. They always make Christmas in New York and like the holidays seem so magical, but I imagine it's truly terrible. It's so like, must be so crowded and like
so cold and windy.
And it's also probably not as great now. I feel like the department stores were such a cornerstone of the shopping market back in the early 2000s and the 90s and all before that. And now we do so much shopping online that I'm always like, oh my gosh, that sounds so magical. Let's go to New York City. And then I think about actually going to New York City and it's not for me.
But I also wonder, like, I think probably the population of New York from when this movie was created until now is skyrocketed, but also the Christmas season is now 5 times longer, and there's now a lot of online ordering that I wonder how different the crowds are there versus now, realistically, given all those other factors.
Maybe one day we'll make it to New York to see.
I don't really have any interest, but sure.
I said that's why I said maybe. It's not high on my list. There's other holiday places to go. And my next note is I wrote, don't love the emotional cheating, but definitely so culturally significant. Like, I don't like the idea of like you meet somebody and you're just like actively talking to them and if you're that excited to get a message from somebody you don't know, then you're clearly not in a relationship that you need to stay in. Like, it's fine if you have met somebody else and you want to move on, but they keep dating for a really long time, both of them.
I was honestly surprised there wasn't more fallout with those like breakups. It seemed like movies made around then, it would have been much more of like a violent, like, I can't believe you're breaking up with me, all this crazy stuff. The fact that it was mostly amicable seemed crazy.
And actually, my next note is I appreciate the breakup. Is I do like that this showed that, because I feel like for so much, especially of our youth, it was like, let me fight and be angry with you, and we break up and I hate you. And this was
and
like,
what love is.
You know what? I don't really love you. And you know what? You don't really love me either. And that's fine. And so
why would we sit here and just be miserable at each other?
And I think that's something that is so underappreciated and not talked about enough. And I love that was an example of that. And it's fine that you both don't love each other. That's totally fine. And like, don't waste each other's time. By all means, move on.
Especially when they're not married, don't have kids. If there's no reason for them to just sit there and just be miserable.
Yeah. I also could not get a read on how old they were supposed to be. Because to me, like, these actors are so much older than us as actual humans that I was like, are they 40 or are they 30?
I wonder how old Tom Hanks was during that, because that was 98. Tom Hanks was born in 56. So he would have been, 42? And Meg Ryan is...
Yes.
Which she was born in 61 to 60. She'd been 37. So, like, not super young for this.
Yeah.
I'd say they're probably supposed to be playing, like, mid-30s.
Mid-30s. Yeah, and that's what I eventually picked up on. But it was hard for my brain to be like, how old are you supposed to be? Because I know you're a lot older than me. And, like, I don't know where this fits.
Which was also weird when she was like, yeah, someday my daughter's going to take over this bookstore. And she was not married, didn't have kids. And, like, didn't seem like to have, like, a clock ticking or anything like that.
And then... just Meg Ryan in general, I remember the name being so hyped, and she was in everything. She was in When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle and this, and like she was like the it movie actress. But I don't know that I get the hype. Like, she's a very quirky person. Like, all of her characters are really quirky, which is probably a lot more realistic to like the stereotypical or like the normal human person. But I just imagine most, or maybe just like our generation of like, was like the most beautiful, the most perfect. I mean, she is also blonde, but like, the perfect person was the love interest. And she's just so much quirkier than I thought she was going to be that I have a hard time with it.
I feel like she was just, had that like weird, quirky, like smile, whatever thing that I think a lot of people like really attached to. And like, she seemed like she was just like a less talented, like, I feel like an Anna Kendrick would be like the more...
Yes, she is quirky like her for sure.
But I feel like Anna Kendrick is way more talented in so many ways than she 100%. Is.
100%. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And maybe because we weren't like older during her heyday. The more movies... I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a Meg Ryan movie until this year when we watched When Harry Met Sally.
But I think also like When Harry Met Sally, that one diner scene, I think is...
She's also in Top Gun.
Right. But I think that when Harry met Sally, like that diner scene, I think really set off her career. And I think it got a lot of people like really like, antsy in their pantsies for that. That I think that's like what really just kind of, she just rode on that of, I'm a Meg Ryan in this movie and people just loved it. But not that she's terrible.
Yeah. It's not that she's bad at it.
Superstar over the top.
It's just different than I expected my whole life because it was just like, I heard the name so much, but I was 7 when this came out or 6. I wasn't going to go see this movie that I couldn't get the hype of what people are talking about. So I don't know. It's just different. And, okay. So now I'm just going to sit down and talk about Joe Fox because it's my last note. He's a horrible person. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can get over you being in your business, doing your thing, whatever. But the fact that he sees her in the restaurant, knows that he's the one or she's the one that he's been messaging. And then he doesn't tell her and continues to see her and continues to run into her and continues to meet up with her. I would be mortified. No way when he showed up in the park would I say, I was hoping it was you. I would be like, you can go F off and you are never going to talk to me again. No way would I start dating you.
He was a real dick. Like of all the Tom Hanks characters I've seen, this was like the least likable of them.
Yeah. I was so angry of like what a horrible example of relationships this was for people that like, oh, he's done all this horrible stuff to me, but I guess I'll fall in love with him. Absolutely not. Like, like so gross. And I mean, I was really hoping that like, I mean, it was one thing when he was like going to walk away in the restaurant and he thought he was going to leave. I was like, that's really rude. Don't do that. But for him to then go in there when he knew that she was waiting for him and then just didn't tell her and then continued to see her. Oh, I was so angry. So angry. I can't believe this movie is so popular and that people like romanticize this form of a relationship when that's what he did. It makes me so angry.
I think though, not to like defend him, but to like play devil's advocate there a little bit is people didn't really know how to behave online then and how to like handle a online versus a real relationship. That like maybe that's kind of what they were trying to portray or what they were getting at there. But it came off, at least to us in present day, is him just being a dick.
Yeah.
And like mentally just like messing with her and just really being mean.
And yes.
And cruel.
People didn't know. And like she even said, like they both even like mentioned like, how do I do this? Is this cheating? Or like, why do I feel this way? I've met him online. Like they acknowledged all of that, which I did appreciate that they acknowledged that like they didn't know what they were doing because it's super accurate. Loved that. And like, maybe I could get over him not telling her when he went and saw her in the store or in the coffee shop or whatever. But then he keeps seeing her. It's that he just keeps spending time with her. I just cannot imagine being able to get over that. Yeah. And not being just really mortified.
Creepy the more he like was like stalking her almost. Yeah. It just felt like really creepy. Like he was getting,
because
like,
if he told her in the cafe and then they'd kept hanging out and he had like been like, give me a chance. Like, let's go out one time. And then everything else with them in the park and all of that stuff. Sure. But to just like continue to embarrass her. Nope.
Agreed.
So anyways, those are my notes.
Sure. So we'll go to my notes next.
Sorry, I was just real fussy.
We'll just pivoting because I'm looking back to my notes, which started at the very beginning of the movie, where I loved the very beginning intro to the movie when they show the like dial-up sounds. Oh my god! And the like moving the cursor on like the Windows 95 background, just love those sounds.
Even the mouse clicking sound, like there was just so much little stuff that I'd forgotten. Amazing.
And they were showing like this weird like 3D rendered New York City, and like I liked how it had to actually load parts of it. People just forget like things loaded,
loading in layers.
Instant. It wasn't like, oh, nothing, boom. It was like you saw like you said, the layers like loading. Very cool. And then I liked how in the first scene where Meg Ryan's boyfriend Frank or something was mentioning about the state of Virginia banning solitaire for, I guess, government workers or something for being too distracting. And I'm like, can you imagine nowadays like how many more distractions you have than just solitaire? Like people could probably have like 5 million games on their phone, so much more addicting and distracting than solitaire back then. But I totally get the whole like, oh my god, this is ruining the like workforce and ruining everyone's ability to focus and their productivity. We have to ban this game, solitaire, the most exciting game of all time.
Hey, I love solitaire.
It's a great game, solitaire. But I think games have evolved much more addicting and gamified now.
But my first thought with that was The Office. Because I just feel like someone was always inevitably playing solitaire in the background on that show. And like they're in the workplace being distracted, and like it's supposed to be kind of like a satire on the office place. And I was like, oh, well, they were all obviously not working in this like environment. And
if they just removed solitaire, they would have been so much more productive.
If only Scranton was in Virginia, they wouldn't have had solitaire.
That was the thing. If they were distracted just because of solitaire. I liked how they kept talking about the concept of going online. Like nowadays, everyone's always online. It's weird if you're not online. If your like phone broke or your like the internet in your city went out. Otherwise, you're just assumed to be online.
I just can't imagine anybody who is not online. Like
you have to make a conscious effort now to not be online versus the opposite then of you had to actually sit down, be there, be present, and go through the whole...
Take your home phone off the hook so that you could be online.
All the steps of verifying password and whatnot to get online. Yeah, and to, like you said, take everyone else off the phone line if you didn't have an additional phone line. Just a different concept of how people were expected to be available. To not have that status icon like turning green. Nowadays, everyone's always online, so you just assume they will be. In the bookstore, they talked about, I guess, online dating, and someone referred to it as like cyber sex, which I thought sounds so much cooler than sexting.
Oh, yes.
And like I feel like cyber sex was such a huge like issue that people were always like concerned about.
And I love that was like so just like they talked about it, but it was also like not a big deal. And I liked that. Not that I'm a big supporter of that.
But it was such a big thing, like growing up, they're like, oh, you need to be careful. All these chat rooms you go in there, people will cyber sex you. And nowadays everyone's like concerned about like sexting and as if it's any different. It just seemed so much different and dirtier at least, or like scarier because it was called cyber. Then.
Yeah, the word cyber is really aggressive sounding.
Maybe another title for the movie could have been Cyber Love. Like I already mentioned that their emails felt like tweets passing in the wind. Just felt like they weren't really talking to each other. They were just giving their general thoughts that nowadays people would just use tweets for.
But I also feel like if she hadn't said, I like to start in the middle of a conversation with you, I don't think I ever would have thought about it. I would have assumed, as the audience member, I would have assumed there was a bigger start to each email that then led into what they were talking about. Unless she had said it, like if she hadn't said it explicitly, I don't think I would have thought about it.
They were just constantly in like some sort of long email chain for sure. Fox Books was clearly Barnes & Noble. 100%. Looked like I could smell Barnes & Noble every time they showed a Fox Books store.
Could we argue that maybe at the time it was a Borders?
Maybe. I don't know.
I was like a big Borders girl.
Were there Borders around here?
Oh yeah, Borders books. Oh, I vividly can picture the gift card that I received for a birthday from Borders books. I can see it in my head right now.
Nah, I was a Barnes & Noble guy.
I remember kind of feeling controversial about it, and then Borders went out of business, and I had to be a Barnes & Noble's girl. But I do love a good bookstore.
I also thought as they were typing out their emails that they type and talk out loud the same way I imagine my parents like type and text and talk out loud while they're typing things. It was just so cringy. I'm like, no one from our generation would like actually talk or text like that.
I will say I did make a mental note when watching Tom Hanks type. He was kind of like hunched over his computer, and the way he was typing, I was like, do people like, is it just like because his desk is a weird height that his hands feel really close to his face, or he was like very close to his laptop.
And he also had hit the backspace or delete like with both fingers as opposed to highlighting and just deleting.
Oh my gosh, when he was individually typing every single letter in his email,
and holding.
I was like, dude, Control A, delete.
But he was doing that. He was literally using both hands to press backspace faster because he thought that was the fastest way you could do it.
Bro, you got to learn some shortcuts.
And it's those ways that really captured like that generation and how they thought that was the only way you could do things.
Rule number 1 in my elementary school classroom was let's learn the computer shortcuts because it will change your life. I remember being a sophomore in college and teaching my roommate that Control P would print. And she was mind blown. And I was like, how do you not know this?
Yeah. So the younger people that I work with now don't know those shortcuts either. And it kills me. Like I said, we live in that golden age where we know the before times and the after times, and we know how to utilize that power.
I am very thankful we live in the now times, and I'm very thankful that we are who we are and that our children will learn from us.
Yes, we'll make sure of that because it's terrifying. Scary world out there.
Be careful out there, everybody.
We talked about Callie O'Malley from Grey's being in there as the shop clerk.
Can we talk about her scene for just 1 second, though? That if she was in the cash only line, like that was another thing that I felt like really dated this. It was like just the amount of times they paid with cash, and we like hardly ever pay with cash at all, unless we're buying things on Facebook Marketplace.
A card only line.
Yeah. And like all the self checkouts are like, you can't pay with cash. Are you sure you want to check out here? And I'm like, yeah, I want to pay with my card. That was a real like cultural difference for me.
I thought the same thing, and I imagine that a lot of that was probably like due to avoiding the credit card fees, but I think that was also just a weird. They needed some reason to hold up the line.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it would be someone like trying to write a check or something.
Can you imagine writing a check for your groceries?
Yeah, people still do it. It's awful. Turns out this movie is a Christmas movie. My next note.
Hey, they said Happy Thanksgiving. Did they ever say Merry Christmas?
They talked about Christmas a lot, and they had Christmas decorations. And
they did not say Merry Christmas. I saw a turkey.
Spring. True.
I saw a turkey, and I heard him say Happy Thanksgiving back. Mm-hmm. And she said Happy Thanksgiving back.
Okay, so it's a Christmas and a Thanksgiving movie.
I would classify it as a holiday
movie.
Because it gets the holiday season of Thanksgiving and Christmas. It is not as explicitly Thanksgiving-y as I was hoping it would be.
Like planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yes. But what they did when they said Happy Thanksgiving, I was like, okay, Thanksgiving.
Yes. I felt less bad about this being a holiday-themed episode when they kept leaning into the holidays there.
Yes. So. And it was the Christmas season, too, a lot in the movie. Like, the spring was the last, 20 minutes of this 2-hour movie.
And my last note was when she got stood up at the bar and then came back and he, had a message. And just that being, a really early version of just being ghosted.
I was kind of hoping they would use the term ghosted and we'd be like, oh my God, it dates back to 1998.
The origin of being ghosted. That it's still very true to this day where something happens or someone doesn't like the way you interact and they suddenly just stop replying and just ghost you and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. I was so shocked that he actually did go back and message her at all. I assumed that was going to be the end, but I should have known that the movie's only been on for an hour, that they still have a lot of movie left to go. But yeah, ghosted for sure.
I think it probably could have been better if he actually had fully just ghosted her there. And it wasn't until later where she, because they apparently went to all the same stores and were always seeing each other in public, walking on the same streets. If she had heard him, overheard him say something that somewhat revealed him to be that character, or for her to make that connection, maybe it was another Godfather reference or something that he referenced 100 times in the movie. To put that together, it could have been more interesting as opposed to him just going in there and being a dick.
Yeah. I think the general premise of the movie, time capsule, great, loved it. Mm-hmm. How they let it play out makes me very angry inside. I just think it was just a mean characters that just fell in love for that didn't have any redeeming qualities. He really did nothing to redeem himself to her. And that's what makes me so upset.
I would honestly love not a modern version of this, but more of a remake of this particular time period, a better version. Especially with hindsight of knowing what that era was actually like and how it would go on to be looked back on, to really take advantage of that whole having to sign on and giving a better relationship story through all that. And
I keep being I feel like we give better representations of relationships and things these days. But I also feel like we've seen some movies, and honestly, what was it? Say Anything was the first one where it was I feel like this would stand up. That was what sparked this whole let's start a podcast thing, because we talked so long about their relationship and how they could talk to each other, and that it's not just
say anything to each other.
Oh my God. Thank God that was not an actual podcast. There were some healthy
relationships in this. The way that
their
breakups seemed much more
Kathleen
believable and healthy than you see a lot nowadays. So there was something there. I still feel like
they put too much value on the unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, well, I think they kind of had the general it's a theme we've seen in a lot of these movies where they have a concept and they come up with a general idea of people are online dating, and they just let the rest of it just kind of fall into place, but don't put as much thought into the rest of the movie. That I think you could think out a full cohesive good story to tell with all this and retain the nostalgia and retain all of the actual limitations of how you communicate over that and tell a much more compelling
Agreed.
end-to-end story from that.
I want a remake of this, a true 1998, or even like you could push it to like 2004 or 5. Like you could push it up a little bit, but like somewhere in that time period, I would love a remake of this.
Yes. You've still got mail. You've got mail too.
You've still got mail.
I know what mail you got last summer.
Okay, now we're getting off the rails. So I think that we have summed it up for this week. I am glad that we watched this because it was on our original list of movies we wanted to watch for the pod. It was not the most Thanksgiving-y movie, but I will take it because they said it. And
always take an excuse to pod.
And always. And hopefully we will be back in the next couple of weeks with one more like Christmas holiday themed episode. And then for sure we will be back in 2024 with some sci-fi season 4.
I can't wait. I'm so excited for those.
Yes, we are excited to be back. We have missed this so much. To stay up to date on all things Culture Night Pod, you can follow us on Instagram at Culture Night Pod. You can email us at culturenightpod@gmail.com if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas for us. We are always welcome to comments. And you can also follow us on YouTube at Culture Night Pod. You can watch our podcasts. You can watch our shorts.
I think it'd be very appropriate if people emailed us after this episode.
Yes, please send us an email so that we can say we've got some mail.
You've got mail.
Unfortunately, Gmail does not have a "you've got mail" sound effect, but I think they should bring it back because we're deep in the nostalgia era.
I could wire something up.
I married the right man. All right. So until next time, cheers.